So I was in the library. I was looking for other books to fill out my other cells of the bingo, and I was kind of stuck. So I asked my friend to give me some recommendations. And for the cell that was first book in the series, he recommended Tunnels. I think this used to be a pretty big series back then. Not sure about it now. It might still be, but this is the first of like a six-book series. Tunnels. The series is also called Tunnels, and it's by Roger Gordon and Brian Williams. So the whole idea is like it's one of those fantasy stories where children, well, in this case, the main character Will and his dad, they're basically like archaeologists, even though Will's still in like middle school or something. He's like 14, um, and they're thrust into this collision between two worlds. And in this case, it's like there's a secret underground society that everyone living above has no idea of. So underground, they're called the colonists, and above ground, they're called the topsoilers, and the topsoilers have no idea that the colony even exists and how deep its roots are. But I think that's done very well. So basically, in a lot of other books, like if you take Harry Potter for example, a few chapters in, Harry Potter's already in Diagon Alley, right? So the merge between the two worlds, in this case, the real world and the magical world, is very quick. Um, and it's more of the character settling in. In this case, the reveal is stretched out a bit, which I really love. So there's like maybe a third to a half of the book where um, the big reveal has not happened yet, and it's just this mounting tension of the characters realizing that something sus is going on, right? So I think that is done extremely well. Um, and on top of that, the actual world itself, the world building of the underground society, is also really, really intriguing. So I think this is a part that both my friend and I agree on. The concept of this secret underground world is super cool. And one thing I like, for example, is the dad. He's given this orb, and this orb, its shtick is that the darker it is, the brighter it glows, right? So he's confused by this. He's like, "What the heck is this made of?" He sends it to some researchers, and eventually, when Will, the kid, makes it down, he realizes that this orb is how they light up, their houses, how they light up the dark underground, dark subterraneans, right? So that was something I found really cool, and there are a bunch of things like this where they will give small hints of it, and then and then there's like it's all these little details in world building that really make it stand out, and I think this book does that incredibly well. Perhaps it's because there are two writers, right? So you have two brains coming up with ideas that mesh well. And another thing that I think the authors have done well is like with the prose, this is a very detail oriented book, right? So you have to take careful care to express the imagery of, the underground, of the characters' emotions. It is a fantasy book, right? I feel like prose is kind of a big part to this where, the fantastical parts have to be expressed with English, right? So I think both authors do that very well in the sense that with the adjectives or any like phrases used, they all make sense. So they they do a very good job of describing what's going on, is what I'm trying to say. And that helps engross you into this whole secret world, right? So that was the main catch for me. I think it's done brilliantly. The only things that I'm like kind of iffy on is that because there's because the setting is so fleshed out and so engaging, I feel like the characters and the plot itself doesn't really compare, in the sense that like as a typical fantasy book where the main characters are all children, I feel like it's hard to get behind a character and truly like root for them, because I personally don't understand them completely, even though I am also a teenager. And I'm not sure if that's a result of like people meant to be my age, a bit younger, thrust into this world that I wouldn't have experience in, but it doesn't feel right. It feels off. And the other thing is the plot, where it's like it's filled with twists, right? So this is a book that loves to have twists frequently. And I think they are either predictable, as in you can tell what's going to happen, which in of itself is not bad. But what annoyed me was that the other twists that weren't predictable were a bit too outlandish. And I know it's a fantasy book, but when I say outlandish, it's kind of like once you read the book and you get to the twist, your thoughts are like, oh, okay. So instead of being like, oh my god, right? Like it's more like, ah. And it's because it's so like absurd that you're like, whatever, we'll just roll with it, right? So that's the part that I didn't quite like, but I think that's mostly a result of this book basically can't have any like true plot in the sense that plot that actually contributes to a greater whole in the series, because the whole point is that it's introducing these characters and the setting. It's setting the stage, it's introducing to you the characters that will be important and relevant throughout the series and stuff like that, and the villains, in the sense that there's no actual plot going on, and it's just an amalgamation of what's here's basically what you should expect. Which in that case, if the plot continues to be like that, that's the main reason why I wouldn't read the other books in the series, even though the catch, the hook is so intriguing. It's because like I personally am not a fan of these kind of plots where there are a bunch of twists and you just have to roll with it sometimes. In a sense, I generally don't like these kind of fantasy plots, I guess, but that's just the me thing. But yeah, the overall setting though is really cool. The transition between the top soldiers and the colony, very good. Prose, excellent. So as a first book, it does a great job of establishing what the series is going to be about. So I just think the plot itself is maybe not my type, and as such, I won't be continuing it. But it is a decent book, so I give it a 6 out of 10. Tunnels by Roger Gordon and Brian Williams. If you like this book, I think the next book in the series is called like Deeper or Closer. I'm not sure, but yeah, you should definitely check it out.